So, this is probably a common problem and dilemma for folks with cars that they don't want to drill license plate holes into. Um, just got a Range Rover Velar, and of course, there's no place for a front license plate. However, we do have a mesh grille on the lower section. Now, the problem with this is that the mesh grille also houses a front-facing camera right there and two front sensors, one on this side and one on the passenger side. So I looked around to try to find some way to mount a license plate without it drilling into the car and also trying to avoid the sensors, which led me to this gizmo here from Sly Brackets. This is an outfit out of San Antonio, Texas, which after doing some extensive online research seemed to have the best solution. They have mounting materials for mesh grills as well as grills that have slats going horizontally. So this is the mesh grill, and basically it's a clever bracket that goes through the holes and turns up the other side and then ends up with a mounting place where you can screw in some hardware that's included with the kit, and you end up with this. Now on the Velar it is offset because the camera on the right side at the top there is the center of the grill. Wasn't ideal, but it at least allows a place for a license plate to fit. I didn't want to drop it down too far because then I'd run into issues with parking bumpers and things like that. I didn't want to catch the license plate up on that. The problem again is I can't block that little sensor, and the problem is if I put it a little more this direction on the car, I run the risk of blocking the sensor and the camera, which is right there. So with all of that, I thought, wait a minute, there might be another way to do this that would avoid having to spend so much money for this very cleverly engineered bracket, but might be a simpler solution for folks if they don't want to take the time or the expense to go through Sly Brackets or some other no-drill mounting bracket company. So what I did is I went rooting around in my collection of pieces and parts, at which point I found I had 4 of these very common angle brackets that I picked up at Home Depot for some purpose, I don't know when, and decided that maybe they could work in a similar kind of way to the very fancy, expensive bracket that I got here, in that they could go through the grill and then turn up, and as you can see holes through the mesh grill just above where the bracket comes back out, and that pulls against that. If I could just find a way to mount a screw in there, I might have it. So I took those basic brackets, turned them into S-shaped brackets, number 1, and then used some Gorilla Glue and put a nut on the back side so that I'd have something to screw into from the front side. So now these function similar to the one that I bought, and I can mount these anywhere because they will go through the mesh and then turn up. And as you can see, I can get through the holes to get to the screw that I mounted on the back side of the bracket. So just as an example, I decided to mount the bracket here. I could go through my license plate to the screw or the bolt and the nut on the back side. That I Gorilla Glued on there. So in that way, I would be able to mount my plate. The idea being that it would be much more flush with the grill and not sticking out quite so far. I did notice that, as you'll see, between the sensor here and the camera here, if I mount it there, I'm going to probably have to trim the license plate just a little bit. I found that the camera here on the front of the Velar is extremely wide-angle, fisheye almost, and so even when I mounted the plate over here on the slide bracket, just sticking out as much as that, it basically could see the whole back side of the license plate. Even when it's mounted, even though it's mounted all the way over here, from where the camera is, I can still see the edge of that license plate, the back edge of that. So it's a very wide angle view on this front camera. But I'm hoping that my little fashion gizmo here might just do the trick, and so I'm going to give that a try. So one thing I'm noticing here is, in order to hold this into a proper orientation so that I can get the bolt through there, I'm going to temporarily add a little piece of duct tape just to hold my mini bracket at the proper orientation here. That should work better. So I did the same on both sides after determining where the holes actually line up so that the license plate will screw into the holes and the nuts that I glued to the back side of my small brackets. And with a little luck, if I snug these down, I don't really want to snug these down because, as you can see, this is a 2000 license plate from California, which is not where I live right now, and I don't have my new license plates yet, but I think that might actually be a better solution. It avoids the camera lens here. It's very flush to the grill, so that shouldn't cause any problems with the actual camera operation. Now this side, I would have to trim on my real license plate, take a little notch out of this so that it doesn't occlude the sensor there on the front. But other than that, that might be a better solution than this, which sticks out, I don't know, a good inch or so from the grill. I'm going to leave that on until I actually get my real license plate, and we'll find out. But for a very inexpensive solution, again, this was kind of pricey, very well engineered. I have no complaints about the product whatsoever. But in terms of an easy fix, a couple of little L brackets from Home Depot, a couple of, I think I used 1 1/4 inch bolts, some lock nuts. The whole thing was about a $5 deal, and that might actually work. So hopefully this is helpful to some folks if they don't want to go to the time and expense of doing a more expensive kind of fix to put their license plate on a Range Rover grill.